All right, everyone. Well, welcome to another edition of the Unpredictable Pipeline. In this series, we are featuring marketing leaders who have been navigating their teams, their companies, their organizations, their industries through 2020's unpredictable waters. I'm very excited to have with us Liz Anthony from ViON. Liz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me. I really appreciate it.
So we're recording this on a Friday morning. I can see daylight behind you. I am on the West Coast, so it is not daylight here yet, but it is coming. I'm excited. I'm excited for Friday, always. But really excited to have you on. And I know, like, we've had a few people come onto this series and talk about the channel, and I know that's going to be a big part of what we'll cover here as well. So I'm excited to have that conversation. Maybe first, just introduce yourself. Who is ViON, and what is your role there?
Thank you. So I am SVP of Marketing with ViON Corporation. We're a service provider based in the DC area. Been in business about 40 years, and we work with some of the top OEMs in the country. We really offer, I think our secret sauce is everything as a service, so a private cloud model, and that enables us to have some really rich relationships with the OEMs that are going into the as a service model. We've been doing it for about 20 years. And so we bring that expertise to the table and manage a team of about 10 people for marketing.
Awesome. So I'm an old guy now. And so when I hear OEM, when I hear MDF funds, I immediately know what that means. I'm not sure everyone does anymore. So maybe just start by, I know you do a lot of work through the channel. Can you just sort of define OEM, define MDF, and talk a little bit about what that ecosystem has historically looked like?
So the OEM is the original equipment manufacturers. Mm-hmm. Those are the product producers, now product and software. And for ViON, we work predominantly with our partners to develop custom solutions for our customers. Mm-hmm. ViON's market is particularly the federal market. It's about 70% federal, 10% SLED, and then about 20% commercial. So really, when we look at working with the manufacturers, we're really looking at how do we develop that joint story with building these custom solutions for the end user. Uh-huh. And when you look at that kind of joint engagement, you're looking at bringing joint funding to the table in order to get the message out and to drive joint pipeline.
Thank you. I think sometimes we use our language and our acronyms, and you don't want to assume everyone knows what that is. But I think once you describe it, you're like, okay, that totally makes sense. And so you've got a manufacturer, you've got a partner. It makes sense for both of you to sort of partner together and sort of talk a little about the nature of MDF funds historically and sort of how those materialize. Are some of those are incentive based on kind of past performance as well, and then. This year, obviously, budget cuts across the board. We've seen some of those funds go away.
Right. So marketing development funds have been historically earned funding. Uh-huh. So in the past, depending on what you sold, you got a percentage back, usually in the 1% to 2% range of your sales. Uh-huh. And so then that funding would come in and be utilized for joint marketing. It also could, and depending on the manufacturer, it could be used for purchasing equipment. It could be used for hiring sales support personnel or technical support personnel. So just depending on the rules of that particular channel program. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a big change in the rules around MDF. And so basically, there are some organizations that still have funding based on what you have sold. But predominantly, the shift has been to what's called a business case-based marketing. Uh-huh. And so that's where you have to write a proposal and you basically say, what you're going to do, how you're going to spend the money, what time frame. And for the majority, they're still focused on a quarterly basis. So as you get into more complex selling, that's where I think the rub starts to be felt,
Yeah.
because the sales now for the more complex integrated solutions are more like 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to, from a sales strategy, you know that you're going in to have to build the relationship to sell over this period of time. But from a marketing standpoint, you've got to keep that drum roll going on a quarterly basis to build that momentum for the sales initiatives.
Yep.
And so I think that the channel funding model hasn't really caught up with the change in the sales models.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare that organizations are funding on an annual basis. And even if they are funding on it, if they say they're funding on an annual basis, they're really saying, okay, but we're going to check in quarterly and we'll pull back and push, pull and push on that funding depending on how your sales are doing over the year. The other thing that I've seen that's been very interesting is some of the manufacturers, when they want to affect their profitability at the corporate level, will start to look at marketing and specifically channel marketing funding in order to pull back some of that funding to affect their bottom line. And so all of a sudden, especially in this difficult year,
Mm-hmm.
you see some of that pullback.
The other variable you mentioned that's happening is that we're seeing some of those OEMs reduce their direct sales force, so having more of a partner focus. How does that change in how the OEMs go to market affect MDF availability and affect how partners can engage with them?
So that's a great question, because you really are hearing from the manufacturers that they are reducing their direct sales force overall, but they are investing more in the channel programs.
Uh-huh.
I think that many of them are building more customized channel programs that many of the small partners can leverage, so that you can opt in and they do a lot of the work for you. But as a more sophisticated partner and a larger partners, they can't really take advantage of that. You don't really need your demand generation to look like the other partners, and you want more custom, you want thought leadership.
Yeah.
So really what you're really wanting is to have the ability to drive that engagement, to drive that thought leadership, to drive the deal, and to bring in the OEM. However, the funding for the most part is not matching that shift to the channel partner driving the deal. So they've leveled the MDF, the marketing investment dollars, but are asking the channel partners to do more.
Uh-huh.
And that's creating a lot of pressure on the channel partners to fund that, forward fund it, and getting that investment payout maybe 12 to 18 months later. So the risk is now shifting from the OEM to the channel partner.
Yeah. I mean, the where the relationship and where the power sits in that relationship, depending on sort of who has the end customer relationship, who has the sway, is a big part of how that relationship is going to work. I think the last question I want to ask before we have to wrap up here is just around. I think Latney comment at 6 Cents. She said one of our coffee talks. She said, the what did she say? That the partnership is about the deals drive the partnership, not the other way around, right? That a lot of people say they want to have a partnership, and they don't really know what that means. But I want to have a partnership. I want to do some stuff together. But until that starts to generate deals, there's really not a lot of momentum. So for companies that are looking to increase their investment into channels, looking to increase sort of co-selling opportunities, how would you recommend they balance sort of building relationships versus focusing on going and getting some of those early deals that can drive more performance from there?
I would say that when you're developing a partnership, one of the first things is to pilot the relationship. And I'm going to call it pilot, because what that means to me is really making sure your message aligns, that you can have a couple of accounts that you can go together and win to test the whole sales cycle. So from from procurement all the way through customer experience,
Mhm.
and then roll it out into more in a broader partnership. And so that means making sure that your message is aligned, you have some content pieces that you can drive demand, that you have sales teams engagement and actually account planning.
Mhm.
And therefore, you really have a win. And once you have the win and you can document the win and the
Mhm.
customer experience, everybody starts getting the idea of how do you replicate that? Let's
Yeah.
do it again and again.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Liz Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. I think we don't get the deep dive on channel marketing enough. Most of the time we're talking about direct. So some great advice here. Where, if for people that are watching this and want to learn more, where can other people sort of connect with you and learn more about what you're working on?
So love to connect on LinkedIn. I'm also at ViON.com, and happy to hear from people. Love
Awesome.
it.
Well,
Thank you
thanks
for
again,
having
Liz,
me.
for doing this. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.
Happy Friday.